welcome to another episode of the ASUN Gameday podcast. I am William Hall, and we've got a lot to get into, so let's just get rolling. First of all, men's basketball. The most recent game to take place was on Monday in Florence, Alabama, Central Arkansas, at UNA. The Bears fought back from a 13-point deficit, came back to win that game by 7 points. And I know that this is not the UNA team that we've seen in the past. But it's still very impressive to go into someone's building and win that way with that lead that UNA had built, the confidence that they have playing in their home building. Now, they've been away from home for a while, the Lions that is. They were excited to get back home to play that game, and they came out early in that game just on fire, so to speak. They built that lead. It was double digits for a while, got up to as high as 13. But UCA kept chipping away, stayed in it, came out in the second half, eventually took control of that game late in the game. It took a while for them to finally get a lead in the game, but once they had it and they had gotten back into it, I feel like that confidence that UCA has built, it just kind of started to shine through. They were able to hold off UNA and continue their winning streak. Now, I think that you take this game and you added into what UCA did last Saturday on the road at Lipscomb, giving the Bisons their first loss at home. Now with the win Monday, they extended their win streak to 8 games, and it's no longer a question. The Bears are for real. I think that, you look back to the preseason rankings, and you see that UCA was picked 8th by the coaches. I think it was 11th by the media. So it kind of begs the question, why do we even do these polls? Because expert polls, right? I mean, I get it. It's happening back in October. We're here in February, and right now, Central Arkansas is solely in possession of second place in the conference standings, and that is a surprise for a lot of people, obviously, going into the season where we thought they would be. And 8-game win streak can't be denied. UCA is for real. So let's see what they have going on now. Coming up, UCA, I think they can keep the momentum going, but we've got 3 weeks of conference play left to go. 6 games left on everybody's slate before we get to the tournament, but right now UCA is looking for real. Another team on the men's side, Bellarmine. Now, last week, I called the Knights a dark horse, was the word I used to describe them, and they now have 4 wins in a row after they handled business at home against Stetson and FGCU, a team I also called a dark horse last week. And they won those 2 games combined 37 points across both wins. And both of them were double-digit victories. But this is the week. This week, I think, will tell us a lot about the Knights as far as where they really are going to end up when this all shakes out. They are on the road against the top 2 teams in the conference. They are on the road at Austin Peay and at Central Arkansas, a UCA team that we just got through discussing how impressive they have been. And Bellarmine on the road, this is a kind of a test to see what this team really can be, again, against UCA and Austin Peay. And the Govs are holding on to that number 1 spot right now after they picked up that win. I think they beat Lipscomb last week, beat North Alabama on the weekend. But that game against Lipscomb, look, when we talked last week about the standings on the men's side and what that game could be, Austin Peay, Lipscomb, and I think the focus was kind of on, at that point in time, Austin Peay beating Lipscomb, getting some gap there in the standings, and you look up now and it's like 11-1 Austin Peay, and right behind them is 10-2 Central Arkansas. Queens has started to figure some things out. I mean, they're right behind them with 9 wins. So I think that as much clarity as we thought we were going to get if Austin Peay was able to beat Lipscomb, these other teams were like, hold on, wait, we got games, we were winning games, and now things are a little bit tighter. I feel, my opinion, Austin Peay is still a solid choice to secure the regular season title. I think they are right now the best team. I think they still remain the team to beat, but we got to have the games played. There's still 3 weeks, and that separation that we thought was going to be bigger It's not as big as it was. Now, speaking of separation, there's no team in the ASUN in a better spot than the EKU women's basketball at 12-0. They got 4-game lead on the second-place teams. And they've got home games against Central Arkansas and North Alabama around the corner. There is a world where next week this time, we're looking at EKU as a regular season champion, as the number 1 seed in the tournament. But the games still have to be played, as I've said several times. But looking at what EKU has been able to do, that is a team that's got to have a lot of confidence going in. But they've got a game against a team that might be finding its footing, Central Arkansas. Speaking of the Sugar Bears, 3 wins in a row, and they're right back in the mix of things coming down the stretch. And you look through UCA's schedule, the remaining 6. They're on the road in 4 of those 6 games, and neither of those home games that they have are back-to-back. So I think that's a challenge that UCA will have to face. Obviously, all the teams are traveling for the tournament unless you are North Florida and Jacksonville, with the tournament being in one single location. But going over this next stretch of games over the next 3 weeks, 4 out of 2 on the road, UCA's got it's not impossible. Clearly, we've seen a team like Austin Peay on the women's side who is amazing on the road, so it's not unheard of to be a good road team. But for them to get where they probably want to be at the end of this season, with these 6 games left, the majority of them are going to be on the road. They've been doing a bit of bouncing around, traveling. So want to see what UCA can get done over this last stretch. And the final team on the women's side I want to talk about is Jacksonville. Now, I said last week that the Dolphins needed to go down to Fort Myers, get that win for me personally to start taking them seriously, and maybe others who have been possibly overlooking Jacksonville to start to take note. And, well, they went to Fort Myers. They won their 5th game in a row after beating the Eagles, and they ended a 20-game losing streak to FGCU. I think that was a signature road win for the Dolphins. And they've got another one coming up Thursday. This one's at home, a tough game. But I think that game on the road against FGCU, a program that has really been it has been the bar in women's basketball in the ASUN FGCU, and especially a hurdle for Jacksonville specifically. Everybody has struggled with FGCU, but Jacksonville being in the conference longer history in the league, more games against FGCU, and a longer losing streak to FGCU, which they finally put an end to last Saturday in Alico Arena. I think that was a big win for Jacksonville to get them rolling, going in the right trajectory, moving forward in these last few weeks of conference play. I think that's great for the Dolphins. And look, as we look at things starting to wind down for men's and women's basketball, we're also ramping up for our spring sports. Baseball, first pitches this weekend, opening day. And softball did start last weekend, and just on the softball side, gotta say, shout out to North Florida, reigning ASUN champion Ospreys, getting the season started off right with a win against Auburn, the SEC opponent. Our softball is good in the ASUN. If you didn't know, it's worth taking a look at. Our softball teams always go out there and fight. We've got a good softball season coming up, I feel it, as well as baseball. Men's and women's lacrosse, tennis, track, everything's going. It's that time of the year. The crossover is real, and what can we say? It's an exciting time of the year as we start to get ready for our men's and women's basketball tournaments just here in about 3 weeks. So we're going to take a break and be right back with some key games across the basketball schedule.
Welcome to the Atlantic Sun, where heart-pounding moments are born and where champions rise above, where speed defies limits and precision finds its mark, where millions of fans nationwide cheer for excellence, determination, and fairness, where public, private, and faith-based schools compete side by side, fostering sportsmanship and unity. From the beaches to the mountains, the Atlantic Sun is the destination.
We are back, so now let's get locked in on some key games. And first of all, Thursday, women's basketball, Central Arkansas at EKU. Already have kind of hinted at this game, the importance of this game. This matchup was it's a big game. I mean, you got EKU trying to keep their streak going, 12-0 in conference play, trying to tighten their grip on the potential regular season title. They haven't gotten it yet, but this game could go a long way, obviously, for them getting the wins necessary to lock that up and that number one seed. Then you got UCA trying to play spoiler for that, as well as put themselves in a position to get that first round bye. They're not in a position, where they can lose too many games if they still want to try to get to that number one seed, but it's not out of reach with the amount of games they have left. They went out having a different discussion about UCA, so they're also looking to avenge an earlier loss that they had on their own home floor, so they would love to just spoil this run that EKU's been on, and to do it in Richmond will be big for UCA. Also on Saturday, women's basketball, Austin Peay hosting West Georgia. Wolves are looking to keep up with the teams higher than them in the standings right now. Austin Peay is looking to get back into form. They've dropped 4 in a row. This game is obviously big for both of these teams. Austin Peay trying to get back where just a few weeks ago, they were hovering in that 2 or 3 spot in the standings, and now you look at them, they've dropped, 4 losses in a row. We'll do that to you. But then you got West Georgia, a team that has some big wins on the year. They're right there in that group, this a little bit below, right outside of the top. We've got 3 teams tied right there on the women's side at 8-4, all trying to keep up and chase and hopefully knock off EKU or catch up with EKU. A lot of work to be done in there with the 12-0 team at the top of the standings, but this West Georgia at Austin Peay game, I think, is a big game for both of those teams. On the men's side, Wednesday, Bellarmine at Central Arkansas, another game that was mentioned earlier. The Knights building a lot of confidence, but they're facing off against arguably the team that's looked the best over the past few weeks in the league. And the last time these two teams faced off, it went into overtime. I think both of these teams are better than they were at that point in time. UCA clearly has solidified, and that's the last that weekend that UCA lost to Bellarmine and EKU. The Bears have not lost since that weekend, and so Bellarmine coming into this game as one of the 2 teams that has beaten UCA in conference play, and that is just you kind of got that feather in your cap a little bit going into that game against UCA. You did beat them earlier in the season. Granted, it was a while ago, but I do think both of these teams are better, so I'm expecting, hopefully, just as exciting of a game this time as we got the first time these 2 teams played. Also on Wednesday, Austin Peay at Queens. Queens win in this game shakes a lot of things up and makes things really, really interesting coming down the stretch for obvious reasons when you look at, like we've already laid it out, 11 wins, 10 wins UCA, Queens at 9. That just makes it real tricky coming down the stretch trying to pinpoint who will be a regular season champion, get that 1 seed. I think both of these teams are part of that group that's kind of separated themselves as a group in the standings, although that gap is also closing with Lipscomb taking some losses here. So that jump between what used to be between 4 and 5 is not as big as it used to be, which is great for fans of ASUN basketball coming down the stretch here. But you got Austin Peay's defense, which has been great this season. You want to see, can they slow down the Royals, who have been the best offense in the conference scoring-wise so far this season. This matchup will be big. And I have to mention that we have our ESPNU game coming up this week. EKU faces North Alabama. These 2 teams always play well when they face off, and hopefully we get another great one in Florence this Sunday. ESPNU, EKU at North Alabama. Those are our key games. Let's dive into the power rankings. And I Don't think there's much shakeup, but just jump into women's first. I think that's the easiest one to start. How could you not start with a team that's 12-0? Number one is EKU. Number two is Jacksonville. I think I'm going Jacksonville because of the win that they had against FGCU, which, again, they've won 5 in a row. So they are playing well right now. They are confident, and I think that the game coming up against a team that is third in my power ranking, Stetson, is probably going to be a big one. 4 is West Georgia, 5 Central Arkansas, 6 is North Alabama on the women's side of the power rankings. I went West Georgia, obviously, still one of the better teams in the conference, still in a good spot. And I think that Central Arkansas at 5, because they just beat North Alabama, another game that took place on Monday. And I think that Central Arkansas is kind of starting to find the groove, see what they can do against EKU. But right now, I think they are, because of that win, it's kind of why I flipped them. So UCA at 5, North Alabama at 6. Jumping to the men's side, number 1, 11-1 on the season, conference play-wise. A big game that they won last week against Lipscomb, taking out North Alabama. Number 1 is Austin Peay on the men's side of the power rankings. I think that's no surprise. And probably no surprise, number 2, Central Arkansas. The 8-game winning streak. I think that UCA is right there. They're right there. They are ready to handle their own business. But if Austin Peay was to slip, I think UCA is ready to jump into that number 1 spot. So I think, and that's in probably my rankings and in the standings themselves. So I think that 1 and 2, they're very close at 1 and 2. 3 right now is going to be Bellarmine in the power rankings right now. I think that the Knights are finding confidence. They are on a roll right now. I think that this is a time where, again, I just called them a dark horse. And I don't think that Bellarmine has played their best. I think there's more that this team can do. And I'm curious to see what the Knights are able to do when they're matched up against some tougher opponents. They've got a schedule left, and it starts this week with the 2 games that they have. But they are 3. 4 is Lipscomb in the men's power rankings. I think it's 2 losses. You got to drop down a little bit with Lipscomb. But again, they lost to the top 2 teams in the standings, Austin Peay and Central Arkansas. 5 is Queens. They're coming in at 5th. I think they're starting to return to form a little bit. They've put together a couple wins here in a row after they lost 3. Good week for Queens. Got a tough, challenging game coming up against Austin Peay, has already been mentioned. 6 is EKU. And I think that EKU, 2 games in a row, EKU has won. And I think that EKU is a team, when you look at the record at 5-7, you probably think that this is, obviously it's a losing record. That's easy. But I think that I feel like that is probably not a team that many teams want to face off against. I think that EKU, despite the record, is a challenge, and they're going to give you all they've got week in and week out. And I think that will probably bring them a handful of more wins as we go through these last few weeks. I don't think EKU standings wise might end up in the top half of the standings when all this is said and done. I won't throw out the dark horse title because I was 1 for 1 last week with my 2 dark horses, but no dark horses this week. But EKU is 6th in the men's power rankings, and I think the Colonels are starting to figure it out at the right time. Those are the power rankings. We're going to take another quick break. Then we'll be back to discuss our ASUN matchup of the week. It is now time to dive into our ASUN matchup of the week. Takes place Thursday. Stetson at Jacksonville, women's basketball. There's a lot of history between these two programs, longtime members of the ASUN. There have been stretches where each team has kind of taken a hold of the rivalry, kind of got their wins, put them together. But overall, looking at the whole entirety, things definitely lean in favor of Stetson, 36-18 all time. Last season, played twice. They split with each team winning on its own home floor. That's all the history of that matchup. Let's talk about this season and the teams that we're going to see Thursday. Both of these teams are trying to keep ahead of the pack that's coming up behind them, so to speak, to lock up a first-round bye in the tournament. Both of them obviously still are trying to, if they can, catch EKU. Both coming into this game at 8-4, so just right there below. Stetson has 7 wins on the road this season. Jacksonville has only lost twice at home. Could be an interesting part of this. Another layer to this is the fact that this is a matchup between two individuals, and we're kind of going deep on this, call this matchup of individuals, but these two student athletes probably have to be on anybody's list, a short list, that is, for ASUN Player of the Year. That's Cameron Thomas at Stetson, Priscilla Williams at Jacksonville. Those two are 1 and 2 top scorers in the ASUN. Thomas at 17.2 points per game. Williams at 15.7. Priscilla is also leads the conference in rebounding. So if you were to scale this down between and look at the matchup between the two individuals that will be on the floor, that's a setup to be a great matchup against those two great scorers. And then, but those are just two names. There are plenty of names on both sides. I think that if I had to name an X factor, I think that Tatum Brown pushes the Dolphins to another level when she is playing well on the floor. And I think that as she goes, Jacksonville kind of goes. So I think, we've seen Priscilla Williams carry Jacksonville to a win pretty much with her offense and her scoring ability. But I still think that Tatum Brown, where she fits into that offense and the way the team is flowing, has a lot to do with the success that Jacksonville will have. On the other side, Leah Sorrentino is in the groove. I think the Hatters are able to beat anyone on any night. Again, we talked about Thomas, the scoring, what she brings to the table, but Sorrentino is a player that can kind of swing the tide in your favor. And when she's hot, knocking down shots, I think that changes what you have to do. And now you have, which way do you go defensively, trying to guard Stetson when they have the ball. So this is the type of game you hope for late in the season. One that means a lot for both teams. And you've also got a long-time rivalry built into this matchup between Jacksonville and Stetson. So you take all that, the individual play, the outstanding scoring that you got, these two teams at 8-4, trying to climb in the standings and catch up with EKU, but definitely not trying to drop out of the situation to where they can have a first-round bye. Put that all in the mix. That is why this game is the ASUN matchup of the week. Stetson at Jacksonville on Thursday. Love is in the air, maybe. We're easing up on Valentine's Day, but I will say what I do love is another week of ASUN Sports. I am William Hall. This has been the ASUN Game Day podcast. I'll see you next time.